Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ken Weber, Kerri Murray, and Melanie Taylor.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, my name is Ken Weber. I'm the executive director of Zynga.org. I'm responsible for social impact at Zynga. This session is entitled Game-Changing Marketing, and the frame of it is that games and gamification, as you all know, are a disruptive and emerging force in branding and consumer and donor engagement. And in fact, some people have gone so far as to say that philanthropy is the future of marketing. Biz Stone recently said that, co-founder of Twitter. And so I have two esteemed panelists here with me to discuss their perspectives on this I'm probably not doing this justice, from an agency and client perspective, and also from a nonprofit practitioner's perspective. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Melanie Taylor, and I'm a vice president at Social at Ogilvy, which is the social media arm of Ogilvy Worldwide. And we're a global practice that really focuses on the digital and social extensions for our clients. And a lot of times that plays out in creating different kinds of social engaging games, as well as aligning with cause marketing and charitable functions within those.
And I'm Kerri Murray, and I work with Direct Relief International, where I'm the Vice President of Communications and Development. And I just wanted to start by doing a quick poll to see who in this room has heard of Direct Relief International. Okay, now put your hands down if I talked to you yesterday. We're going to talk more about it in a few minutes, but Direct Relief is a very large medical humanitarian organization. We've been around since 1948, and the hallmarks of the organization are ones of efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency. And I'm going to talk about consumer engagement, and specifically a marketing strategy around teaming up with a game. And it's one of Zynga's games to really raise awareness of a really large issue and how the players were able to come together and do a heck of a lot of good in a very desperate situation. So I'm excited to talk to you about that.
Melanie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I will. So I'm just going to take you through an example of a game that we recently did for the American Chemistry Council, which does the Plastics Make It Possible campaign, which you may or may not be familiar with. But we partnered, I'm going to skip ahead, but we partnered with Recyclebank, which is an online, I guess it has gaming functionality where you're rewarded for making socially conscious decisions in terms of recycling things. So in the way that our game works, it's very much kind of a ripoff on Paper Toss, but our purpose was really to educate consumers about the benefits of recycling and what plastic bottles specifically can be recycled into. So the first iteration of the game is called Bin It, and it's out now. It's been out for probably 8 months. And as you toss the bottle into the can with swinging monkeys and all kinds of things around you, you're fed educational messages. And we thought, it doesn't really we didn't have a huge budget. It was really just an extension of the campaign to get the message out. Also, it targeted more of a millennial type of audience compared to the moms that we typically reach. So by partnering with Recyclebank, and it wasn't just a partnership, there was money that was involved there, but we're now the game that's launching in a few weeks. As you play, you will earn points in their platform. And in exchange for the trade in the technology, which is just an implemented API, is they're guaranteeing us 10,000 downloads of our game, and right now the game is just in the iTunes store, so it's not Android enabled. But we're allowed to kind of carry that further, so there's an actual benefit to playing the game besides education, which was a huge kind of advancement for them. And just one example of how we can use gaming to, in this case, not really sell product, but sell information. So I don't know if there's another screen, maybe, of how this works together. But that's kind of the play, and you can see how Recyclebank, that's just the flow of the game. It's not going forward. Oh, I'm not pushing the button. So you pick your screen, and then at the end, you can see how their points can either be turned into T-shirts or patio furniture, or you can cash in your points as well. So that's just one example of using more of a charitable site to enable more of a consumer-focused game. There.
Thank you. So Direct Relief International, it is, again, a medical humanitarian organization. The organization is probably best known for its work in disasters. It represents only about 15% of what the organization does, but if it bleeds, it leads. And that's when the press tend to really talk about the work that Direct Relief International is doing. In Haiti, it's been the largest provider of medical material aid post the earthquake. And after the Japan earthquake and tsunami in 2011, actually we received a phone call from Zynga. And I'll tell you straight up right now, I know very little about games. But over the past year, I've definitely witnessed the power that games as well as their players can have in doing a lot of social good. Now, when Zynga had reached out to Direct Relief, Zynga wanted to do something in play where they can engage their players. And it was the players of Mafia Wars. And when I first had heard about Mafia Wars, I had never heard of it before, Ken. I'm sorry. But I was a little cautious. I said, Mafia Wars, and they said, don't worry, everybody has a mafia, it's okay. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna sell a product in game. And I know all of you are familiar with that. But this product was one in which it was a Japanese protective fan, and it would pop up on the screen. And when players would purchase this item, 100% of the purchase price of the item was going to go directly to Direct Relief's Japan Relief and Recovery Fund. In addition, the player would advance and it would propel the gamer further within the game. And so there was this really twofold benefit of the player being happy and moving forward in the game and also feeling really good about a brand and a really important issue at the time, which was obviously the devastation that happened in Japan. So over the course of just about a week, over 100,000 players participated and purchased this virtual fan, in which you can see it on the screen. So that 100,000 was about 102,000 players, contributed over $600,000 to Direct Relief's Japanese Relief and Recovery Fund. What that meant in terms of donor support was massive. So in 2009, we had about 5,400 donors to the organization. And within a week, in that time period, where the gamers were engaged for this effort, over 120,000 donors. And most of them obviously new to the organization. And so, again, a very credible and authentic way to engage a player in a time and a place that's highly relevant and obviously engaging to them. And it's doing a heck of a lot of good. I spent a lot of time in Japan. I actually traveled with someone from Zynga to see some of the projects. Zynga represented roughly 10% of the overall donations that came in to the fund. And it was amazing to see everything from the initial relief efforts that were taking place, from basic need provision, hot meals, shelter services, mobile medical units, to up in the areas where the tsunami really was inundated, which was Sendai and the Nishinamaki, where you have half of the population that's employed in the fishing industry, which was completely wiped out, where we were engaging the folks in the community in work programs, all enabled through the gamer support, all of them participating by purchasing roughly a $5 item in play. It was massive. So again, when we look at building a marketing strategy, a cause marketing strategy, really consumers are very favorable to this. A recent report came out that said 83% of Americans wish more products would actually support causes. And they'd be more likely to buy a brand that actually builds a cause into the marketing and into the effort. And the games have been really an amazing, amazing way to allow people to participate in a humanitarian effort in a new and powerful way that really had never been done before, which has had massive implications. Now, in addition to the Japan effort, Direct Relief has done several more campaigns with the folks at Zynga, within other games as well, not just Mafia Wars, but Castleville as well. And I think the unique thing is we've also been able to raise awareness for issues that really a lot of folks don't know a lot about. One of those is childhood pneumonia. So childhood pneumonia is the #1 killer of children under 5. It kills more kids than AIDS, malaria, and measles combined, and it's referred to as global health's most solvable health issue. So within the game, we were also able to, again, leverage the players and the network of gamers that Zynga had opened up to Direct Relief. We were able to encourage their participation, engage them, and educate the folks on a brand new issue that probably most folks weren't aware of. Able to raise a lot of funds and ultimately able to do a lot of good. And I like to call it the kind of the win-win-win. So there's a great win for the brand, there's a huge win for the consumer, and there's a massive win for the cause. And again, so much of the work in Japan was enabled by gamers coming together and so quickly and in just a massive way to do so much good. And we're seeing that transcend into other issues as well, like childhood pneumonia, like preparedness. And it's very exciting. I think Direct Relief is committed to really continuing to explore where we can go and the good that we can do. And I think if today, a few things that you take away, one, you've heard of Direct Relief, and you check out the website, but two, you consider of how you can build a social component into the game. It's really gonna be good for the brand, and it's great for the cause, so. That's my last slide. Just to update you on Japan, we've granted, of the $6 million that's been raised, $4 million has gone to grants to 9 different groups. If you're interested in learning more, all of the groups are available on the website, and Direct Relief maps and tracks every single donation that's given. And you can review the groups, you can review where the donations went, and you can continue to monitor the support that we provide through Zynga and into Japan and the other projects as well.
Thanks, Kerri.
Great.
I think that's the extent of our prepared remarks. We're actually down a panelist, so well done, guys. We've got time for Q&A if there are questions for any of us.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Direct Relief and how it interfaces with the game, how it works?
Sure. So the first game, the campaign that we did was again around Japan, and it was the Japanese virtual fan that would pop up in-game. And the players could, if they wanted, purchase the item. It propelled them further in the game. 100% of the product donation went to the Relief and Recovery Funds. In addition, which was incredibly helpful, if gamers wanted more information, there was a pop under window that popped up that linked the player directly to Direct Relief's website. So the players could go in, and what we saw was this was a way to engage the players more around the work of Direct Relief. So they could come on if they wanted to learn more, make an additional donation, connect with the organization. They were able to do that. So we found that was an incredibly useful tool by having the link directly to the website. In addition, we spent some time really with the folks at Zynga in Japan to report back to the players. Direct Relief is all about transparency, so you can visualize all of the work that we do on the website. But what was critically important was that we actually went back and we circled back with all of the players that contributed. And so what we've done consistently is we provide video updates and reports that I know the folks at Zynga have shared with the players and the folks that participated in the campaign. So we continue to engage them, and they know where the donation has gone. I'm sorry.
Why did they get the call? It was like the 8th call we made. No one wanted to work with Mafia Wars.
Direct Relief's been around since the 40s. And again, 100% of all donations go to programs. So you're not going to see the organization on billboards. But what you will see the organization is on a lot of charity ranking sites. So Forbes, Charity Navigator, and what we find is when people start really doing their due diligence and searching for efficiency, effectiveness, they typically find Direct Relief. And that was really how the folks at Zynga found the organization, is they wanted to commit 100% of the product price to the efforts, and they wanted all of it to go there, nothing off the top, which is what Direct Relief is always committed to doing. No.
I mean, as luck would have it, you know, this effort from within Zynga originates with Mark Pincus' sister, Laura Pincus-Hartman. She happens to be a development person herself, and so had a pretty good awareness of the space and was very driven to kind of choose organizations that were, you know, results driven and that were going to help with that kind of visible feedback loop to the players. So a happy coincidence, but, you know, credit to her for doing that research and picking Direct Relief.
And I think it's interesting that Zynga went straight to them. We often play like a moderator to match brands with causes, and that's always kind of an interesting thing. I mean, this ranking, to find somebody, usually you have somebody at the top who's aligned with the cause, and that's where you start. But I feel like a lot of brands are very big into pushing, you know, so you have a game and you engage people and they're like, sell me, you know, let's give something away, and we've started doing research to see, would people be more likely to engage and walk away with a better experience if they were donating to some kind of cause versus entering in for a chance to win something selfishly. So we kind of bounce that out. I think it's interesting that there was no go-between here from my world, but it's great. Yeah.
I think that, I just want to say it's great that you all are working to but it's interesting, the intersection. One of the students on Facebook posted this image that was kind of funny, showing, thank you, showing, it actually showed someone, like a stick figure, and it had the word citizen under it, and then it was scratched out, and then there was another stick figure next to it that said consumer, and it was supposed to be kind of a joke about, you know, people are not as civically engaged and don't really have an identity as a citizen anymore, and they're more just trying to be the model consumer. So I was wondering, how do you balance that, you know, from a marketing perspective? It's like, what's the jumping off point for how far your causes go? Because sometimes it could get, you know, we saw the Game Sweatshop yesterday that was talking about whether the goods that we're marketing and the brands that we're marketing are even in line with some of the values of social justice.
I think for Direct Relief, when we look like an initiative like this, it's important that it's very authentic. And I think when it's not, folks can sense that right away. And so for Direct Relief, it's always to be really authentic, to be very transparent around where the donation's going and what the work that's being done is going to take place, and also circling back with the donor. I think for us, we always try to also go to where the donor is, and so we try to communicate in a very relevant way. And if it's something that we don't do, we don't say that we do it. And so it's always being authentic, and I think that's really important as you look at your marketing strategy, is to really understand your consumers and be authentic.
From a brand perspective, I think it's really challenging. I mean, to cross that line and make that be convincing, and so it doesn't look like you're just adding something on to be more self-serving than you're already being. And so really trying to balance that and finding something that is relevant and something, or even like getting people to start, you know, like lay that groundwork so in a year you can make this, you know, feel like you've always been part of this organization, so it doesn't feel like, oh, well, now we need a charitable thing. You know, it's just kind of like sticking a spokesperson on it too from a PR world. So I feel like you want to engage in authentic, as she said, an authentic conversation, but it's not easy, and I think it's very quickly, and a lot of brands do it poorly.
It's definitely a tension within Zynga. You know, it's a 3,000 person company making games primarily for fun and profit. But you know, we want to make sure that we're not just sort of enabling convenience, giving microtransactions where people feel like they're then off the hook. I think the concept is moral licensing, where they feel like they've done their part for $5 or $10, and you know, they're then less likely to give, you know, a larger gift to an organization like Direct Relief. So we're tracking that very closely. We want to, we look at the ratio of people who give to the ratio of people who kind of click out of the game and go to the charity's website. It's surprisingly high, sometimes by a ratio of 100 to 1. We're also working with our charitable partners to understand, are these new donors, is it additive, are the demographics different, you know, are we kind of expanding the pie? We don't want to be just displacing or diminishing kind of existing giving. But you know, to your point, you kind of got to go where they are, and if we can be something of a gateway drug for particularly younger demographics who are playing these games, then I think long term that's probably a good thing.
That kind of gets to my question. Since you've been around, since the organization's been around since 1948, and so you now got a new voice, a new life as far as awareness is concerned. How does that translate for the long term? Because oftentimes, it's the disaster of the day, the disaster of the month, and then after a while, the energy dissipates and people move on to the next thing. How do you feel that you can use the same strategy to keep it in perpetuity till the issue's resolved? It'll take years. Obviously.
It's a really great question. And again, the disaster relief work for direct relief represents roughly 15%. And it's the work that we're doing every single day in all 50 states at the community clinic level that really enables us to build those relationships. So when we're supporting these clinics in 70 countries around the world every day, we can really turn it on in a disaster. However, again, if it bleeds, it leads. And when it's on the news and it's on the forefront of the TV, it's really when people feel very inspired to participate and get involved. And I would say with most disasters, it's low single digit in terms of the number of donors that give in a disaster that will then give again. So it's always the challenge for the organization is how do we retain these folks over the long term? And so, a lot of our messaging is that you can't do in a disaster what you don't do otherwise. The reason that direct relief was effective in Joplin and providing medication to Access Family, which was really in the eye of the tornado, was because we'd been working with Access Family 2 weeks before and 2 years before. And so it's really important not just the relief and recovery message, but also the preparedness message and what we're doing every day. And I think trying to increase our communication is really important. And then obviously with Zanga, it's trying to do not just campaigns that have to do with the disaster work, but the campaigns that have to do with the everyday health needs, which are the everyday emergencies that millions of Americans face and millions of people around the world face. So it's a challenge. I don't know that I have a good answer to that, but we're always trying to really communicate the bigger picture and the bigger story to our donors.
I apologize if I'm not going in order. The lights are very bright. Go there and then up to the balcony.
Hi, I'm a mobile games publisher, and I've been using cause marketing for several years now for like Breast Cancer Research Fund and a couple of others. And I'm just curious, from a business perspective, was the engagement higher on the virtual good that you sold the fan? And how were consumers responding to that versus your standard everyday items? And also I have a second question, if you don't mind. Was it difficult, you alluded to it a second ago, was it difficult to find a charity that wanted to work with you?
I'll tackle the first one, the second question first. We have some games like poker and vampires and Mafia Wars certainly that aren't everybody's cup of tea from a social sector perspective, and that's fine. But there are organizations that tend to be more flexible with their brand, a little more interested in some of those different demographics, and so we really didn't make 8 calls. It's such a diverse sector. I don't think it's a problem to find great organizations that want to experiment with this new medium and form of content. It's hard to answer the first question because we have so many games, they're so different in so many different categories, and a lot depends on the creative and how does it fit with the fiction. A lot depends on how well it's surfaced or promoted in a game. But if we put our best foot forward and we've got smart creative people kind of working on the campaign and they're syncing up with the marketing side in terms of letting players know in the game and through other channels, some of those charitable items can outperform other types of new content in a game. We see higher levels of kind of click-through. We often, see new payers or reactivated lapsed payers and players. Those things happen to be sort of secondary benefits of doing some of this work. They're not, the data isn't pronounced enough for me to be able to lead with that argument internally, but it helps for me to be able to say, hey, this isn't going to hurt your business. It's not going to help you make or break a quarter, but there's a double bottom line there. It's the right thing to do, and players love it. Our employees love it as well. But there are some ways where it might incrementally help your business as well.
Hi there. I'm a digital strategy consultant focusing on social value projects, so often sort of, like Melanie, I think, in the middle between brands and causes. And one thing that I'm seeing more with my brand clients is they're often, now this is not anything you can do for Japan Relief. Like no brand can go out and on its own implement a Japan Relief program. But they can implement programs without nonprofit partners on things like healthy eating and exercise and different sort of citizen engagement strategies, voting. I'm just curious if you guys are seeing this at all. Like I'm seeing more brands who have had challenges working with nonprofits and so are sort of developing their own campaigns, sometimes without partners, which...
It might be part of the legitimacy issue, you know, so you don't look like you're tagging someone on as just the cause marketing partner, so it's sometimes easier to find something and stick with it that way. From a social sharing perspective, I think the name brand of any organization, even if it's, you know, not the best well known, helps that a lot. It grounds the brand and ultimately the corporate head of the brand into something people are proud of being part of. And usually that's where we go. I think that having like a corporate movement or whatever is a very good long-term strategy. But if you want people to share and feel good about it and then actually have an effect that seems really tangible, I don't think it's harder to partner with people. It's just hard to make it look real. I mean,
Did you have a question, sir? Yeah. Why don't we go 1, 2, and then
Thank you.
there.
For direct relief, question is, the mechanics. Did the donors actually touch you? Did they touch direct relief, or did Zynga bundle donations and send them over? Presumably, since you're talking about follow-up, you must have gotten names, email addresses, something. But how did that happen? And what kind of opt-in did you presume? Because there must have been a presumption of opt-in if you're going to communicate with somebody. Did anybody actually say, send me information about that? Or was that just assumed that they would want that? At what point does that become something more than really opted in for? In other words, how do you balance your communications so you don't overwhelm them with stuff that they didn't really have in mind? Thank you.
Right. I don't know if you want to handle the first part of the question around how
Sure.
donations are given, and then I can handle the...
We do, Facebook actually collects the money. They give us our share. We remit 100% of that. Facebook contributes 100% of their share. And we do that, we do that in bundles. Our relationship with them and the privacy rules are pretty complicated, so at this point, we're not turning over names to charitable partners or giving people an opportunity in games to opt in. But we are putting that link in that says, to learn more, click here, and that goes to the charity's website. And we encourage our partners to sort of have a special landing page that acknowledges people have come from a specific game or at least that environment. And then it's up, it's up to the charity to do the capturing and, signing people up.
And on that pop under page, we've actually seen thousands in the case of Japan. We saw thousands of folks that actually came to the Direct Relief website. We create a special page for those folks that come through. And then what's been really important for Direct Relief is to report back on where the dollars have gone in Japan. And so we've been very transparent upon putting everything on the website, on the maps, all the groups that have been supported, and also sending frequent communications to the folks at Zynga, who then disseminate it out to the players of the game. So we've tried to do that at different points throughout the year. So at 3, 6, 12 months, we report back through Zynga.
So here and then up there. Thank you.
Those were good questions. One of the concerns we have, we're thinking about doing this, is trying to match the size of our product and organization to the size and expectation of the donor organization, so that essentially you don't swamp a smaller nonprofit that you want to support, you want to raise their profile, but in fact maybe doesn't even have the capability of success, of having the size of success of the funds that might come through, and then how that has a bit of a negative kickback. And secondly, this is a generic platform that you've already developed, but what do you think is the sort of the cost of development for a single organization, a single product to mount this kind of processing, so to speak?
Sure. On the first question, I mean, we definitely look at organizational size and sort of absorptive capacity. You know, we have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people playing our games, and so we try to be very cognizant of that. So, you know, we haven't crushed an organization yet, and I don't think we will. I think it is interesting to start to introduce lesser known brands to players, but you know, one approach we have there is to index along a certain issue so that there's maybe a very well known organization, a somewhat known organization, and a new organization that we're introducing. In terms of the cost, I mean, you know, again, we want to make sure what we're doing is leveraged, so we don't want to be spending $1 to produce $1. You know, it's pretty organic within Zynga right now, and so, you know, on an in-kind basis, employees are kind of donating their time and leveraging kind of existing technology. Part of that's of necessity. We don't have a deep bench that can build, you know, new technology for this stuff. So we're always thinking, well, what exists that we can use and repurpose for these types of campaigns? So I would, you know, to this point, I would say the cost to do this is quite low, and there's a little bit of collaboration between our organization and our partners' organizations. There's some light legal work, but you know, my view is that it's quite highly leveraged. Yeah, there's some gray areas there certainly, but I think the fact that we're giving 100% through sort of takes a lot of, and being transparent about all of that kind of takes a lot of those legal issues off the table. We're also pretty careful, you know, we're registered as a fundraiser in the states that require it, and if our partners want to, you know, file commercial co-venturing papers, we'll do that too. So we just try to keep it, you know, as clean and transparent as possible.
But if you were going to develop your own game instead of partnering with somebody like Zynga, it's very expensive. I mean, especially if the goal is like a charitable donation, you really have to weigh, well, how much are we going to, you know, what's the return on $100,000 to invest this? Not that that's a huge budget, but to get that back, with that money, should we just write a check to the charity? You know, like, could we start thinking about it?
Thanks. This is Dave Gloss with Here's My Chance. For Zynga.org, like, can you talk a little bit more about the operations you guys have internally? Are you waiting for events and things? Or you are actively developing relationships with other partner organizations? It seemed, at least from the evolution that we saw, that it came out of an event, like a response to something. How has it evolved since, and where is it going in the forward in identifying viable partners and other opportunities to take the data that you have to help influence other publishers and organizations to do better at the use of gamifying good?
Great question. You know, the disasters kind of gave us, it gave Laura an opportunity to convince her brother. It gave Zynga an opportunity to kind of test this out, to get that helper's high as a company. And so I think it was a great start. Of course, you know, you shouldn't build a business around disasters. Even Direct Relief is built only 15% of its business around disasters. So I think the challenge now is how do we make this kind of an ongoing and evergreen feature in our games. So we're, you know, as we expand our portfolio of games, we're expanding our, you know, our purview in terms of organizations that we'll work with. We seek some out, many come to us. Operationally, internally, it's just me at this point with a virtual team, you know, of hundreds of people within the company. We'll build a small team and, you know, probably make that criteria semi-formal, but, you know, I think we just need to be, we're in a retail, entertainment, global business, and so we need to be opportunistic and responsive. I also think we want to, over time, get out of the business of, you know, corporation picks charity, presents charity to tens of millions of players. Players opt in or out, and we pass the money through. That's sort of not how our games or anybody else's games work. So we want to, eventually get to a place where players are either, from a limited set of choices or maybe the whole universe of nonprofit organizations, surfacing their own, inspiring their social networks to kind of support the causes they're passionate about. And so, that's complicated, so we'll get there, and it certainly will involve some development and some interesting new partnerships. But I think, what we're doing now is closer to CSR than it is something that sort of truly reflects social games and where we want to head. So I'm hopeful that we can get there.
Thank you. Hi. I'm just curious, a lot of us come from nonprofits and some of us are coming from the commercial world. So when we're talking about marketing and social marketing and cause marketing, is there a difference in mentality? Are there things that we need to think about differently when we're doing social media or social marketing versus, or cause marketing versus regular marketing from a commercial's perspective? If you could help us understand any delineation. And yes, Melanie, I'm looking directly at you.
Yeah, just to clarify, the social in my organization is more social media marketing, not so much cause marketing, but we have a social care group. And yes, I think it is definitely different because you're dealing with different kinds of consumers. I think at the end of the day, it's we're still competing for dollars, if you will, but it's a totally different emotional play there. So I'm trying to think of a specific example of how it would be different, but I feel like when you're looking for partners and how to push a message forward, things like this, going where the people are, still remains the same. So the same reason that people might buy a television spot in the Super Bowl, which those 5 people that can do that, or that actually go, where people are already spending money and it's part of their daily life. You're showing that you understand something about them. And so I think that it all kind of boils down to that, but I do think it's a totally different emotional play. And so the way that you would tell the story is very different. I'm trying to think. Tony, do you have an example? This is why I knew I was going to do that. It's where he lives.
Talking. The tone is different. You're expecting something different when you're online, and it's more of a conversation. So, for instance, I don't know if you ever follow brands on Facebook, but you realize that they talk to you as your friends would. And marketing, it's more the facts, and it's just a little stricter. So I think that you have to be a bit more flexible when it comes to online and understand that people are a bit more fluid as well. It's, again, not specific, but here you go.